Hello everybody, my name is Johan, and recently I just returned from hosting a Primates of Uganda safari. Now this particular trip, if you've sort of followed us for a few years, we used to start off in Kibale doing the chimpanzees, and then from there we would drive into Queen Elizabeth National Park, and we would then finish off with the gorillas. What we've done now, as of this year, is we've kind of have it more focused on just the primate aspects of it. Of course, if you want to add something like Queen Elizabeth or Murchison Falls National Park, we can quite easily put that together as either custom or private guided safari. But for our scheduled trip, we found to kind of have it to the point, doing 3 nights in Kibale, focusing on the chimps, and then flying from there into Kihihi and spending 4 nights in Bwindi National Park doing 3 gorilla treks, and then from there flying back into Entebbe. So for this particular trip and our Primates of Uganda safaris going forward, you will arrive in Entebbe where you overnight the night before the trip starts. And this is a great time to kind of get to know everyone, have a dinner at the guest house before we fly out very early the next morning. I think our flight's normally at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and it's about an hour and a half's flight into Kasese. Now, Kasese is a small little sort of town, almost on the Congo border. And from there, it's about a sort of 2.5 hour drive starting off through the town and then going through farmlands and eventually getting into the forest of Kibale. Now, the camp or the lodge that we're staying at, Chipundu, it's beautiful. It's located probably about 5 minutes from the park entrance. And it's a beautiful little lodge kind of in a forest with lots of monkeys around, and also, I mean, the food and accommodation is very comfortable, and really good food and service from their side. And like I mentioned, we'll spend 3 nights over there, and usually the first afternoon, I kind of like to sort of settle down with the guests, get everything ready for the first trek the following day, maybe go through some images of kind of what to expect, how to shoot in the low light conditions. And then the next morning, we will then move to the park headquarters where there will be a brief introduction of the chimps, kind of the do's and don'ts, and also kind of you'll get then put into different groups. The groups are a maximum of 8 guests per group. And with that, then you'll have your local guide as well. One thing to kind of bear in mind when you're doing the gorillas or the chimps is to take a porter along with you, even if you just have a small backpack. And this not only helps you not having to carry your camera gear or your lunch and those kind of things, but it's also a great way just to promote a bit of work in and around the village. For a lot of these people, they kind of have maybe 1 or 2 treks a month, and that's their salary outside of the kind of local farming that they might do. So it's a great way to kind of get the community involved in the conservation of both species. And yeah, it's just a nice sort of interaction with them. And it's amazing to see how passionate they are about conserving these primates. Now, our first trek in Kibale, the treks in general in Kibale are quite flat compared to what you get in Bwindi. So it's a nice, easy way in getting sort of used to walking around the forest and also photographing these primates in the forest, in the natural environment. So yeah, our first trek, we walked for probably about an hour, a little bit more than an hour before we found the chimps. And our first encounter of them was walking right past us. I looked back at my guests and everyone was kind of had this sort of stunned look on their face, and no one really expected them to get that close. Now, it's important to notice that, or to note that usually they'll say about 10 meters is the distance to keep between yourselves and the chimps and gorillas. But, the animals kind of don't know what 10 meters is. So if they approach you, that's fine. I mean, the guys will tell you to make space if they're walking straight towards you. But usually they are very relaxed and comfortable with the presence of humans. I think chimps in general, though, are, in my opinion, a lot harder to photograph than gorillas. I think they're a lot more active, running around. And that's exactly what we found on the first trip. They were running around, playing. So it can be quite hard. You're kind of walking between the forest, following them. And then eventually you get them sort of settling down, and that's a great opportunity to then get your photos and videos, whatever you prefer to capture. Now, during this time of the year that we went, there were a lot of figs in fruit as well in the fig trees. So a lot of the time, the chimps would go up into these trees, which then it's very hard to photograph. You've got bright light with a dark animal, so it's kind of like a patience game. Eventually, they come down, and then you'll get your shots kind of when they on the ground in the forest. So that's our first trek went beautifully. I think it was nice, sort of easy introduction as I mentioned. And then on the second day, we decided to go in the afternoon to kind of just to get a little bit of a different experience. Of course, you can go in the morning again, but we just sort of decided, like, let's try an afternoon trek and see what it's all about. It's hard to say kind of, which is better. I think, each and every trek is so different, and that's why we highly recommend doing at least 2 treks when it comes to the chimpanzees. But overall, I think guests got some amazing images. Really cool moments captured. And like I mentioned, those chimpanzees, they're so active, so busy. It's a lot of fun, not only from a photographic point of view, but just from an experience point of view. The sounds, they're super vocal, and fascinating creatures to spend time with. Now, after our 3 nights there, we then drove back to Kasese, where we boarded a scheduled flight into Kahihi. And from Kahihi, it's about an hour and a half's drive to Bahoma Lodge, which would be our accommodation for the next 4 nights in Bwindi National Park. On our first afternoon, I normally, depending what time we get in, but it's a great time to kind of go down to the village and meet the local Patwa people who were hunter-gatherers in the forest. And it's, again, nice just to see how everyone, the communities around the Bwindi sort of national park, how everyone benefits from tourism. So the money that you spend on the permits, you can see how it benefits the local farmers, the people making beaded stuff, making curios. It all kind of plays a part, and it's all part of a greater good, which is fantastic to see. So we spent some time with the local Batwa people, dancing with them. It was a lot of fun, just kind of seeing how they live day to day, and kind of how they use the plants in the area for medicinal uses, all of these kind of things, just something a little bit different. And then our first trek started the following morning. Now, the treks for gorillas are definitely a lot harder than your chimpanzees. It's a lot sort of steeper climbing, and it is an impenetrable forest, which means in some parts you literally have a guy in front chopping open a pathway for you to move through. So our first trek was probably the hardest one. Well, not probably, it was definitely the hardest one. We started off the hard way. I think we walked in total, the entire trek was just over 10 kilometers. And I think our total time was just shy of 5 hours. So it was about sort of an hour and a half to 2 hour walk before we found the gorillas. We then spent a little bit more than an hour with them. So it's also something to note, is that they'll tell you have an hour with the gorillas, but it's a quality hour. So if for whatever reason they move into thick brush and you need to kind of chop a way open, they kind of give you that extra time to make sure that you have an hour of good viewing. So the first walk was a tough one over the mountain, but again, well worth it. Our second trek was definitely a lot easier. I think we only walked for about 15-20 minutes, which was and it was a very special experience because there was a very small baby. It was actually a group that broke away from the largest habituated family, so it's kind of a new family that's formed, which is great. And again, every single trek is so different. The makeup of each family is different. Their behavior is different. The environment that you find them in is different. And even your walk and the kind of parts of the forest that you experience is different. So, the second trek, much easier. Great photographic opportunities, especially of the little baby. And then our third and last trek, we then trekked the largest habituated family, which they were very close to another family. So they were actually kind of running around quite a bit. And the area that we found them in was very tricky to move around and to photograph in. So very sort of steep slopes and a lot of underground vegetation. Like it's kind of hard to explain. It's a lot of sort of fallen down plants and trees, so you don't have kind of solid ground to stand on. So it was very tricky environment, but the photographic opportunities, I think the last day was probably our best kind of interaction. Having a baby and silverback and mom walk right past us was simply incredible. And it was probably the best photographic opportunities that we got from a silverback point of view. So again, I would highly recommend, a minimum of 2 gorilla treks, ideally 3, to help you get a better understanding from a photographic point of view, but also from an experience point of view of the species, kind of how they interact with one another, and just how they behave on a day-to-day basis. I think is crucial. So that was it. Our last trek, our third trek, we then went back to camp for lunch, and it was amazing to see kind of looking through all the guest images from the 3 treks that we had. Just the variety of images that people got from different sizes, different interactions, and like I mentioned, different environments that we found ourselves in. We did have a few local gins, which is made out of banana to celebrate. And then the next morning, we then took a flight back into Entebbe, getting to Entebbe just after lunchtime, where you can then either extend into other national parks in Uganda, or there's very easy flights to go from there into the Masai Mara, or then for your international flights back home. So a lot of options when you get back to Entebbe. Some of the guests went to Zambia, and then Chris joined me in the Masai Mara afterwards. So on our scheduled safari, if you see the primates trip and you feel it's a little bit too short for you, remember you can extend to a variety of different destinations, whether it's in Uganda, there's many different national parks there, or if you want to go into the Masai Mara in Kenya or into the Serengeti in Tanzania. All of these options are quite easy, and with our amazing group of ladies that do the logistics, they'll quite happily put that together for you. But that's it for this trip report. Another amazing experience. It's definitely one of my favorites. Seeing the gorillas and chimps in the wild, and I think it's definitely something. If gorillas and chimpanzees are on your bucket list, don't hesitate. It is simply incredible, and you'll be blown away by it. If you have any questions about this particular safari, get in touch with myself or any of the team. We'll gladly assist, and we hope that you will join us on one of these expeditions in the near future. That's it for me for this one. Have a great time, and we'll catch up with you guys soon. Cheers for now.